Marcus Wallace knew something was wrong the moment he pulled into his driveway. The neat suburban home he purchased 6 months ago, his first real investment after years of saving and the crowning achievement of his career as an architect, should have been silent on a Tuesday afternoon. Instead, the unmistakable sounds of splashing water and teenage laughter drifted over his privacy fence. He sat in his car for a moment, engine idling, trying to process what he was hearing. This wasn't the first time, or the second, or even the fifth. "Not again," he muttered, killing the engine and grabbing his briefcase from the passenger seat. As Marcus approached his backyard gate, the voices grew louder. The words that drifted over the fence made his blood run cold. "My mom says it's fine," a young voice laughed. "He's never home anyway, and even if he shows up, what's he gonna do? Call the cops? They're all his cousins anyway." More laughter erupted, followed by another voice. "Yeah, my dad says people like him shouldn't even be allowed in this neighborhood." Marcus stood frozen, his hand on the gate latch. He dealt with racism his entire life, but hearing it so casually from children lounging in his own pool sent a wave of exhaustion through his body. 6 months in this upscale neighborhood, and already he was regretting his decision. He pushed open the gate. The scene that greeted him was worse than he'd imagined. At least 15 teenagers, none older than 16, he guessed, had transformed his meticulously landscaped backyard into something resembling a spring break disaster. Empty soda cans and chip bags littered the patio. Someone had dragged his expensive patio furniture dangerously close to the pool edge. His prized orchid collection had been shoved into a corner, several pots overturned. And in the center of it all, lounging on his pool floats, drinking his sodas from the outdoor refrigerator, were the same kids he'd already confronted 3 times this month. For a moment, nobody noticed him. Then a tall blonde girl in a pink bikini glanced over and nudged her friend. "Oh shit," she whispered, not nearly quietly enough. "It's him." Like a wave, silence spread across the pool. 15 pairs of teenage eyes turned to stare at Marcus standing there in his tailored suit, briefcase in hand, expression carefully controlled. "Afternoon," he said calmly, his voice betraying none of the fury building inside him. "I don't recall hosting a pool party today." A boy with a sunburned face and a private school logo on his swim trunks smirked. "My mom said it was cool." "Your mom," Marcus replied evenly, "doesn't own this house." "I do." "Whatever," the boy scoffed, making no move to leave. "My mom's on the HOA board. She said you can't make us leave because this is a shared community amenity." Marcus felt a vain pulse in his temple. "This is my private property. Get out. Now." The kids exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. Slowly, reluctantly, they began climbing out of the pool. As they gathered their things, Marcus noticed a blonde woman marching purposefully toward his open gate, her designer sandals slapping against the concrete. Her overly tanned face was contorted in indignation, massive sunglasses pushed up into her highlighted hair. Karen had arrived, and Marcus knew as she stormed toward him with entitlement radiating from every pore that this confrontation was about to get much, much worse. "Excuse me," Karen's voice cut through the air like a serrated knife. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Marcus turned slowly, maintaining his composure despite the absurdity of her question. "I'm asking these children to leave my private property that they've entered without permission." Again. Karen's nostrils flared as she planted herself between Marcus and the teenagers who had paused their exit to watch the drama unfold. Her son, the sunburned boy in the private school swim trunks, smirked behind her back. "This neighborhood has always been a community where children can enjoy themselves freely," Karen declared, her manicured finger jabbing the air inches from Marcus's chest. "Before you moved in, the Hendersons never had a problem with the kids using their pool." "The Hendersons," Marcus replied evenly, "may have had different boundaries. I do not give permission for strangers to use my pool while I'm at work, or ever, actually." Karen's face flushed red beneath her fake tan. "Well, I never. These are good kids from good families. You should be honored they want to spend time here." Marcus noticed several of the teenagers snickering as they gathered their belongings. One boy was recording the confrontation on his phone, and another was mimicking Marcus's stance behind Karen's back. Mrs. Patricia Whitfield. "I'm on the HOA board," she announced as if bestowing a royal title. "Mrs. Whitfield, this is not a community pool. This is my private property. Those good kids have trespassed, vandalized my patio furniture, damaged my plants, and consumed food and drinks that don't belong to them." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Are you calling my son a thief?" "I'm stating facts. Your son and his friends have broken into my yard 4 times now. They've left garbage, broken a patio chair, and today I overheard them making racist remarks." At this, Patricia's expression shifted from indignation to calculated pity. "Oh, you must have misheard them. These children aren't racist. They're just having fun. You're being oversensitive." Marcus felt a cold calm settle over him. He'd been here before. The gaslighting, the dismissal, the subtle implication that he was the problem. He reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police to report the trespassing." Patricia's pity morphed instantly back to rage. "You criminalized children for swimming. For repeated trespassing, vandalism, and theft." Marcus corrected, dialing. "I have security cameras, Mrs. Whitfield. Every incident is recorded." This wasn't entirely true. He had doorbell cameras, but nothing covering the backyard yet, but the bluff worked. Patricia's confident demeanor faltered. "Come on, kids," she snapped. "We're leaving." Some people just don't understand community spirit. As they filed out, Patricia's son muttered something under his breath. Marcus couldn't make out the words, but the contemptuous glance the boy threw over his shoulder communicated enough. Once they were gone, Marcus canceled the call and surveyed the damage. Empty chip bags floated in his pool. Towels were strewn across the patio. His orchids, rare specimens he'd been cultivating for years, were knocked over, their delicate stems broken. He knelt to examine one particularly valuable black orchid. The main stem was snapped, the flower head dangling by a thread. This plant had cost him nearly $500 and taken 3 years to bloom. Inside his house, Marcus poured himself a whiskey and sank into his sofa. He could file a police report, but what would that accomplish? Patricia clearly had influence in the neighborhood, and he'd been around long enough to know how these situations typically played out for men who looked like him. No, he needed a different approach, something that would solve the problem permanently without creating more issues for himself. As he sipped his drink, Marcus gazed out at his violated backyard. A slow smile spread across his face as an idea began to take shape. Patricia Whitfield thought she owned this neighborhood. She thought her status and connections made her untouchable. Marcus pulled out his laptop and began making notes. As an architect who specialized in high-end residential properties, he had connections of his own. He knew the building codes and HOA regulations better than most board members did. More importantly, he understood something fundamental about people like Patricia Whitfield. Their public image was everything to them. By the time he finished his whiskey, Marcus had outlined a plan. It would take patience, precision, and perfect timing. But when it worked, and it would work, Patricia Whitfield would never allow her precious children near his property again. The next morning, Marcus woke before dawn. He needed to set his plan in motion before heading to the office. First, he called a security company and arranged for the installation of a comprehensive camera system, not just for evidence, but as part of his broader strategy. Then he made his second call to his contractor friend, Miguel. "I need a specialty job," Marcus explained, "something elegant but effective." "You got yourself a neighborhood problem?" Miguel asked, immediately understanding. "Something like that." After finalizing details with Miguel, Marcus made his most important call to his cousin Janelle, who happened to be an attorney specializing in property law. "They could what?" Janelle's voice rose in indignation as Marcus recounted the previous day's events. "I need to know exactly what I'm entitled to do with my property," Marcus explained, "and I need it in writing. Official letterhead, the works." "Consider it done," Janelle promised. "And Marcus, make them regret it." At work, Marcus was distracted. As he reviewed blueprints for a new downtown development, his mind kept drifting to pool designs and security measures. During lunch, he made another call, this time to Zach Wilson, a college friend who worked for the local news station. "I'm not saying I'll need media coverage," Marcus told him. "But if I do, just say when," Zach replied. "You know, I'm always looking for a good neighborhood drama story." That evening, instead of going straight home, Marcus drove to the community center where the HOA held its meetings. He checked the schedule online. Tonight was a regular board session. He slipped into the back row just as the meeting was starting. Patricia Whitfield sat at the center of the board table, her highlighted hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She was mid-sentence when she noticed Marcus enter. Her words faltered briefly before she regained her composure. For the next hour, Marcus sat quietly, taking notes as the board discussed mundane neighborhood issues. When the floor opened for community comments, he raised his hand. "Mr. Wallace," Patricia acknowledged him with a tight smile. "What brings you to our meeting tonight?" Marcus approached the podium with deliberate calm. "Good evening. I'm here to inform the board that I'll be making significant security upgrades to my property following several incidents of trespassing and vandalism." Patricia's smile didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened around her pen. "While we appreciate your commitment to neighborhood safety, I should remind you that all exterior modifications require board approval." Of course, Marcus nodded pleasantly. "I'd brought the relevant forms for security camera installation." He pulled out a folder of documents Janelle had prepared. "I've also included a police report regarding yesterday's trespassing incident." A murmur rippled through the room. Several board members leaned forward, suddenly interested. "There's no need to involve law enforcement in what was clearly a misunderstanding," Patricia interjected quickly. An older gentleman on the board adjusted his glasses. "What exactly happened, Mr. Wallace?" Before Patricia could interrupt, Marcus replied, "Approximately 15 teenagers broke into my backyard while I was at work, used my pool without permission, consumed my food and beverages, damaged my property, and were caught making racist remarks when I arrived home." This was the fourth such incident in 2 months. The board members exchanged glances. A woman at the end of the table frowned at Patricia. "Were these the same teenagers from the incident last summer at the Parker residence?" she asked. Patricia's face flushed. "That was an entirely different situation, Janet." "It sounds remarkably similar," Janet replied dryly. Marcus continued smoothly. "In addition to security cameras, I'll be installing a new fence and pool enclosure within HOA guidelines. I've included those plans as well." "A pool enclosure?" Patricia's voice rose slightly. "That's excessive and will negatively impact neighborhood aesthetics." Marcus smiled. "Actually, I think you'll find the design quite beautiful. I'm an architect specializing in residential properties. The structure will enhance property values, not diminish them." He pulled out a rendering he'd stayed up late creating, a stunning glass and steel pavilion that would enclose his pool area while remaining visible. It was modern, elegant, and completely within HOA regulations. Several board members leaned forward, clearly impressed. One whistled softly. "This is quite beautiful," admitted Janet, studying the drawing. "Thank you," Marcus replied. "I believe in adding value to the community, not detracting from it." The subtle dig wasn't lost on Patricia, whose lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm also planning a neighborhood gathering next month," Marcus continued. "A pool party properly supervised with an open invitation to all families. I believe in building community the right way." As he returned to his seat, Marcus could feel Patricia's glare burning into his back. But he also noticed several board members nodding approvingly. The seeds of his plan were taking root. That night, as Marcus drove home, his phone rang. It was Miguel. "We can start work on Monday," the contractor said. "I pulled some strings." "Perfect," Marcus replied. "And remember, everything has to be exactly to code. Better than code." "You got it, boss. This is going to be the most beautiful revenge project I've ever done." Marcus smiled as he pulled into his driveway. Phase 1 was complete. The real show was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with the rumble of construction vehicles. Marcus had taken the day off work to oversee the first phase of his project. As promised, Miguel arrived with a full crew at 7 a.m. sharp, precisely when LMOA rules permitted construction to begin. The security system was installed first. High-definition cameras with night vision capability were strategically placed to cover every angle of his property. Each one was visible but discreet, a silent warning to potential trespassers. By mid-morning, neighbors had begun to notice the activity. Several walked by, slowing to observe the work. Marcus greeted each one warmly, offering coffee and explaining his plans with enthusiasm. Most seemed genuinely interested, especially when he showed them the renderings of the finished project. Around noon, Patricia's silver SUV crawled past his house for the third time. Marcus waved cheerfully each time, noting how she refused to acknowledge him. "She's circling like a shark," Miguel commented, accepting a cold water bottle from Marcus. "You sure know how to stir up trouble." "I prefer to think of it as solving a problem creatively," Marcus replied with a smile. By mid-afternoon, the fence upgrade was underway. The existing 6-foot privacy fence was being reinforced and modified to accommodate the coming pool enclosure. As workers measured and marked, a black luxury sedan pulled into Marcus's driveway. Janelle stepped out, briefcase in hand, looking every bit the high-powered attorney in her tailored suit. "Quite the operation you got going," she observed, surveying the construction. "Just getting started," Marcus replied, leading her inside where they could speak privately. Janelle spread several documents across his dining table. "I prepared everything. Property survey confirming your lot lines, deed restrictions review, easement documentation, and a formal cease and desist letter regarding the trespassing." "Perfect. I also took the liberty of researching our friend Patricia Whitfield," Janelle added, sliding over another folder. "She's been involved in 3 HOA disputes in the past year alone, and her husband's real estate business has had some interesting complaints filed against it." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how?" "Let's just say they've been selective about which potential buyers receive return calls." Janelle's expression was meaningful. Marcus nodded slowly, filing this information away for potential use. "Good to know." As they finished reviewing the documents, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Karen A. Laird." Through the window, Marcus could see Patricia marching up his driveway, a man in a suit trailing behind her. "Showtime," he murmured to Janelle. They stepped outside just as Patricia reached the front door. "Mr. Wallace," she began without preamble, "this construction was not properly approved. I brought Mr. Reynolds, our HOA compliance officer, to issue a stop work order. The thin man beside her nodded importantly, clutching a clipboard. Actually, Mrs. Whitfield, Marcus replied calmly, all necessary approvals were obtained at last Tuesday's meeting. I have the signed paperwork right here. He produced a folder from behind his back. That was preliminary approval only, Patricia insisted. Final approval requires additional review. That's not what the bylaws state. Janelle interjected smoothly, extending her hand to Mr. Reynolds. Janelle Washington, attorney, and you are? Mr. Reynolds blinked rapidly, clearly not expecting legal representation. Carl Reynolds, HOA compliance. Wonderful to meet you, Carl. I'd be happy to walk you through the approved plans and confirm that everything meets code and HOA regulations. In fact, the modifications exceed requirements in most areas. As Janelle led the flustered compliance officer toward the backyard, Patricia's face darkened. Who exactly are you? She demanded. As I said, I'm Mr. Wallace's attorney, Janelle replied over her shoulder, and his cousin. Patricia's eyes widened slightly at this revelation. Marcus could almost see a recalculation happening behind her eyes, the realization that he had resources and connections she hadn't anticipated. While Janelle walked Carl through the paperwork, Marcus turned to Patricia. Mrs. Whitfield, while you're here, I want to personally deliver this. He handed her an envelope. What's this? She asked suspiciously. A formal notice regarding the trespassing incidents and property damage along with an itemized list of damages. The orchid your son destroyed was quite valuable. A black pathtoempowerment Rothschildianum. They're quite rare. Patricia's hand trembled slightly as she took the envelope. This is ridiculous. They're just kids. Kids who should be taught to respect other people's property, Marcus replied evenly. The alternative to handling this privately would be filing insurance claims and pressing charges, which would create a permanent record. I assumed you prefer this approach. Before Patricia could respond, a voice called from the street. Mom, what are you doing? Patricia's son, the same sunburned boy from the pool incident, was pedaling up on his bike, accompanied by 3 friends. They stopped at the end of the driveway, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest. Tyler, go home, Patricia ordered sharply. Instead, Tyler dropped his bike on the lawn and sauntered up the driveway, his friends following. Is he giving you trouble, Mom? The disrespect in the boy's tone was palpable. Marcus noticed how he deliberately walked across the freshly planted flower bed rather than using the paved path. Actually, Marcus said, addressing Tyler directly, your mother and I are discussing the bill for the damages you caused to my property. The rare orchid you broke was worth $500, not counting the 3 years it took to cultivate. Tyler's swagger faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. Whatever, man, it's just a stupid plant. Tyler, Patricia hissed, glancing nervously at Marcus. What? It's not like you can prove it was me anyway, Tyler sneered. Marcus smiled calmly. Actually, he pulled out his phone and played a video clip, crystal clear footage from his new security system showing Tyler deliberately knocking over the orchid pot while his friends laughed. The color drained from Patricia's face. Behind her, Mr. Reynolds and Janelle had returned from their inspection. Everything appears to be in order, Mrs. Whitfield, the compliance officer announced awkwardly. The work is fully compliant and properly approved. I would suggest, Janelle added, her voice professional but firm, that you consider settling the damages claimed promptly, Mrs. Whitfield. The video evidence is quite compelling. As if on cue, a news van turns slowly onto the street, the logo of Zax's station clearly visible on its side. I called the local news, Marcus explained pleasantly. They're doing a feature on neighborhood improvement projects. I thought it might give us all some positive publicity. Patricia stared at him, realization dawning in her eyes. She was trapped, cornered by her own actions and her son's behavior, with witnesses, documentation, and now potentially cameras. We'll discuss this later, she muttered, grabbing Tyler's arm. Come on. As she dragged her protesting son away, Marcus called after her, don't forget about the neighborhood pool party next month. Everyone's invited. The construction crew, who had paused to watch the drama unfold, erupted in barely suppressed laughter as Patricia stumbled on the curb in her haste to escape. Miguel sidled up beside Marcus. Remind me never to get on your bad side, man. I'm just getting started, Marcus replied, waving to Zax as he climbed out of the news van. The real show happens next week when the pool enclosure goes up. What exactly are you building? Janelle asked curiously. Marcus's smile widened. Something spectacular. And completely, irrefutably within code. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in his backyard admiring the transformation. The pool enclosure was complete, and it was more magnificent than even he had envisioned. Soaring glass panels set in sleek steel framing created a crystal pavilion around his pool, The structure was modern yet timeless, with sliding doors that could open completely during beautiful weather or seal tight for privacy and security. At night, subtle LED lighting illuminated the space, creating a gentle glow visible from the street, a deliberate design choice. "It's a masterpiece," Miguel declared, standing beside Marcus. "Best project I've done all year." "Worth every penny," Marcus agreed. And it had been expensive, nearly $80,000 for the custom enclosure alone. But Marcus considered it an investment not just in his property value, but in his peace of mind. Besides, the check Patricia had reluctantly written for the damaged orchids and other property had offset some of the cost. "Ready for the grand finale?" Miguel asked, handing Marcus a small remote control. Marcus smiled. "Absolutely." He pressed a button, and with a soft mechanical hum, the entire glass roof began to retract, opening the enclosure to the sky above while keeping the sides secure. It was cutting-edge technology typically used in high-end resorts and luxury homes, and now in Marcus's suburban backyard. "The neighbors are going to lose their minds," Miguel chuckled. "That's the idea," Marcus replied. The following Saturday dawned clear and perfect for the neighborhood pool party Marcus had planned. He had spared no expense. Professional catering, a DJ, floating lanterns for the pool, and even a small platform where Zach's news crew could film their community spotlight segment. By noon, families began arriving. Janet from the AJOA board was among the first, bringing a homemade pie and effusive compliments about the enclosure. "This is extraordinary," she marveled, running her hand along the smooth steel frame. "I've never seen anything like it in a residential setting." "It's becoming more popular in custom homes," Marcus explained. "Energy efficient, secure, and it extends the use of the pool year-round." More neighbors arrived, their curiosity about the new construction overcoming any reticence they might have felt toward the neighborhood newcomer. Marcus greeted each one warmly, conducting impromptu tours of the enclosure and explaining its features. By mid-afternoon, the party was in full swing. Children splashed in the pool under the watchful eyes of 2 lifeguards Marcus had hired. Adults mingled on the patio, enjoying the catered food and admiring the space. The atmosphere was festive and relaxed. Marcus was chatting with an elderly couple who lived down the street when Jan approached, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Patricia is here," she murmured, "with Tyler and her husband." Marcus nodded calmly. "Everyone's welcome." He excused himself and made his way to the front yard where Patricia stood with a tall, stern-looking man and a sullen Tyler. She clutched a casserole dish like a shield. "Mrs. Whitfield," Marcus greeted her pleasantly. "I'm glad you could make it." Patricia's smile was tight. "This is my husband, Richard." The man extended his hand stiffly. "Nice enclosure you've built." "Thank you," Marcus replied, shaking his hand firmly. "It's both functional and secure. No more worries about unauthorized pool usage." Richard's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked briefly to his son. "Tyler has something to say," Patricia prompted, nudging the boy forward. Tyler stared at the ground. "Sorry about your plants and stuff," he mumbled. "I appreciate that, Tyler," Marcus replied evenly. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is learning from them." The boy looked up, surprised by the lack of anger in Marcus's voice. "Perhaps Tyler could help with my new orchid collection," Marcus suggested. "I'm starting a community gardening program, teaching kids about rare plants and conservation. It might be a constructive way to make amends." Richard raised an eyebrow. "That's very generous of you." "I believe in second chances," Marcus said. "Please join the party. The food is excellent." As they walked toward the backyard, Marcus overheard Richard whisper harshly to Patricia, "Did you know this place would be on the news? Half my clients are here." In the backyard, Marcus noticed how neighbors who had previously ignored him now approached eagerly, drawn by the beautiful space and the presence of the news crew. Several AHOA board members clustered around him, asking about the technology and design. "Would you be willing to consult on our community center renovation?" one asked. "We've been planning an upgrade to the common pool area." "I'd be happy to," Marcus replied. Throughout the afternoon, he observed Patricia and her family. They stayed mostly on the periphery, Richard occasionally checking his watch while Tyler slouched in a chair, forbidden from entering the pool. Several times, Marcus caught Patricia watching him with a mixture of resentment and something else, perhaps a reluctant respect. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Zach approached with his camera crew. "Ready for your interview?" he asked. "This is going to make a great segment. Local architect transforms suburban backyard, brings community together." Marcus glanced across the yard where Patricia was gathering her things, preparing to leave with her subdued husband and son. "Actually," Marcus said, "I think we should include the whole neighborhood in this story. It's about community, after all." He walked over to Patricia. "The news crew would like to include some neighbors in their segment. Would you and your family be willing to participate? As AHOA board member, your perspective would be valuable." Patricia stared at him, clearly torn between her desire to be on camera and her suspicion of Marcus' motives. "What kind of questions will they ask?" she asked cautiously. "Just about the neighborhood, the community spirit, that sort of thing," Marcus assured her. "Nothing controversial." After a moment's hesitation, Patricia nodded. "All right." The interview went smoothly. Patricia spoke eloquently about the neighborhood's values and traditions. Richard mentioned his real estate business. Marcus talked about his architectural philosophy and his desire to contribute to the community. "And how do you all feel about the innovative pool enclosure?" Zach asked. Patricia hesitated only briefly before smiling. "It's a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. Very forward-thinking." "Absolutely," Richard agreed quickly. "Raises property values for everyone." Half the cameras stopped rolling. Patricia lingered as the crew packed up. "I have underestimated you," she said quietly to Marcus. "Most people do," he replied. "This isn't over," she warned, but the threat sounded hollow even to her own ears. Marcus smiled. "Actually, I think it is. Unless you'd like to explain to the HOA why you've been encouraging children to trespass on private property. I have quite a bit of video evidence." Patricia's lips thinned, but she said nothing more. As she walked away with her family, Marcus returned to his magnificent pool enclosure. The LED lights had activated automatically at sunset, casting a soft blue glow over the water. Through the crystal-clear glass walls, he could see neighbors still lingering on the street, admiring the view. His phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. "Saw the party on social media. Spectacular revenge." Marcus smiled as he typed his reply, "Not revenge, justice, with style." And as he stood in his peaceful backyard, secure in the knowledge that no uninvited guests would ever again disrupt his sanctuary, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction. He hadn't just solved a problem. He transformed it into an opportunity to establish himself in the community on his own terms. The racist remarks, the entitlement, the disrespect, none of it had broken him. Instead, it had inspired him to create something beautiful and permanent, a physical manifestation of his refusal to be driven away or diminished. In the end, the best revenge wasn't about making Patricia and her family suffer. It was about thriving so visibly and magnificently that their attempts to exclude him became not just futile, but laughably small-minded. Marcus raised his glass in a silent toast to his empty backyard. Sometimes success truly was the sweetest revenge of all.